What is up, everyone? This is Hater Radio. My name is Chris McLean. I'm here with my co-host Ian Gibson. How are you?
I'm doing very good. It's definitely good to be back.
Yeah, Ian had an interesting Christmas. I'm not going to dive too much into it, but we're glad to have everyone here and glad everyone's safe and healthy. And we got through the holidays a bit. We're going to get through the rest of the holidays on Wednesday and Thursday, and then we'll jump back into normalcy into our regular lives. But I wanted to talk about these games just a little bit, Ian. I want to hear your thoughts on the first round game since we didn't get to talk about it the other day. Anything that stood out to you in those first four games?
Well, one of them was Oklahoma's just sheer ineptitude to hang on to a lead here because Alabama was dead to rights, and this might be a good side for Indiana. Was that for that first quarter? Alabama was dead in the water. They had no life. It was all Oklahoma. The defense was getting the stops. They got the turnover and all that, but Oklahoma, for whatever reason, just couldn't. What it really was that third down play that went through the hands of the wide receiver, which would have resulted in a conversion. Instead, they had to punt, where either Mateer could have ran for the first down, or if he does catch it, if he catches that ball, it's first down in the red zone. We're talking about like even more momentum for Oklahoma. But Bama, I mean, I'll give them credit. They did not say die, and I know for sure that they know they cannot fall into that trap like they did against Oklahoma when they play Indiana, because Indiana is not going to give them any breaks. Other games, I mean, Oklahoma and A&M, that was the most fun baseball game I've seen in a football field. Yeah. I mean, it was definitely a fun defensive effort, but I mean, both sides offensively just, were really – I mean, Texas A&M had every chance to win that game and just could not get it done. And then the other ones, I mean, Oregon and Ole Miss beating up James Madison and Tulane. I know James Madison definitely towards the second half was starting to put up more points, but I mean, really after the first quarter, those games weren't really in doubt, and that started the notion of retweaking the playoff system. My only thing is look, I said from the beginning, as much as I am a supporter of the group of five, I think it should be the 12 best teams. But if you retweak this thing, you change the playoff again, 3 years into this thing, and we've already changed it twice. We've changed where conference champions got home field advantage. That got thrown out the window because Boise State, got the Fiesta Bowl. They got the bye last year, and they changed it to the highest ranked teams. And now, say we go to the 12 best teams, 3 years in, we're already changing the system 2 times. It feels like what they were trying to do in the 90s, just trying to find some amalgamation to get a national champion until they came up with the BCS. But regardless of the games, I mean, Ole Miss, Oregon looked fantastic. They got the job done. They didn't fall into any traps, especially Ole Miss. There was a lot riding on Ole Miss for a potential upset because obviously Kiffin's gone. Tulane was the best group of 5 team, but they did not fall into any traps. Same thing with Oregon. But that was just my take from the first round. I mean, kind of, I would say not the most exciting first round besides Oklahoma and Bama, but it's not supposed to be exciting if you get the win.
Yeah, on your point about the playoff expansion and whatnot, I've been putting it out there just because we have the platform, and I feel like it is a service to the G5 teams, just because I feel like the G5 teams have been getting hammered, especially with the results and, just people being upset in general. But I don't know. I feel like we need to be going more towards what the basketball tournament is and not 64, 68, whatever, not that many, because that's a little too absurd. But I'm, more towards the FCS. And I know you've talked about it before. Like the FCS playoff is 24 teams. They have first round buys for the top 8, which would be the best teams. The best 8 teams would get a first round bye. And then all the conference champions get in. So that's the MAC, the Mountain West, the Sun Belt, all of them. They all get in. And so that's 10 teams. And then you have the rest of the at-large teams. And I think that honestly, as much as people are like upset now, I don't think they'd have a problem with that, because then you would have matchups where it's like, I don't know, Ohio State and um, you know, Toledo. And so then it's like that actually has some interest in the state of Ohio. Like fans of Toledo are going to want to see that game. And like, I don't know. I just feel like to be more inclusive of the sport, to include all the teams that are involved with FBS, which FBS is 134 teams, to shut it down to only 12 teams is kind of unfair. And I know it's like, oh, we keep expanding, but I mean, like, we knew this was a possibility. Like they were not going to be able to expand right away. They weren't going to go from the BCS 2 teams then to like 20 teams. That was not going to happen. That was never a scenario in mind, just because of all the logistics of everything. And they had to like ease into this. And it took a long time, but then they realized last year the ratings were huge. And like they're getting people to watch the sport. They're getting more people from across the country involved. James Madison fans were involved. Tulane fans were involved here. So like you're getting more people like interested because they actually have a shot of going to games that are meaningful. I don't agree with a G5 playoff at all. I don't think that helps anything. Like they already have an FCS playoff. All these teams are part of FBS. Like, and I don't want it to be to where they shut down and do like a 30 team super league. I don't want that. Like that's not what college sports are. It's not what FBS is. All these teams deserve a shot. And there'll be plenty of years and games where the group of 5 teams don't win, but the games where, Boise State won and beat Oklahoma, and TCU when they were a group of 5 and they beat Wisconsin, and Tulane beat USC, and on and on. There are games where these group of 5 teams do win these big matchups. And it's like, I'm all for it. And I think, the more we have data of these games, which right now we only have 4 of these real games, because it's the Cincinnati game from the 4-team playoff, last year's Boise State game, and then these 2 games. So there's really only 4 games that the G5 has been in like the playoff since 2014. So, I feel like that's not enough data to really prove anything. I think, if we expand, which I don't know when it's going to happen, because I think next year the talk is like 16 team playoff, which I don't know if we're going to see it. I haven't heard much as far as the deliberations. I know that it's still open ended as far as what it's going to be next year. So maybe it'll be 16. So I know that Notre Dame has that MOU in case they get in the top 12 and in. So like, it's kind of pissed people off. I think I remember that going down last year and it not getting that much notoriety. And it's funny that a year later, when they don't get in and people see it now, they're like, oh yeah, by the way, they're going to get in no matter what. So it's like people are like frustrated about that. Well, they made the rules, they set it up like that. So it is. But
what's funny is that that's always been the case with Notre Dame. Going when they first, it was, you had the coalition, the alliance, and then the BCS in the 90s. And every one of those stipulations was teams in the top 6 in this ranking will be paired off in these, except for Notre Dame. Notre Dame, if they're ranked high enough, we'll get them in. Right. That went with the BCS, the coalition, all that kind of thing. So, I mean, Notre Dame has always had that. So that was the thing is when I saw that, I was like, I mean, yeah, it's annoying, but I'm like, it's always happened since they've ever tried to like systemize some sort of, creating a national champion. Because if you remember in the 90s before the BCS, when it was the Bowl Alliance, it was only the SEC, Big 12. It was really only the Power 5 schools and Notre Dame who had a shot at even making like the big bowl games for the national championship. Yeah. So it was, that was the thing is I find it funny that people are saying that. And I'm like, well, it's been going on for well over 30 years now.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's like, You know, a lot of the fans nowadays are younger, you know, so they're not aware. I mean, I know you're more knowledgeable of the history of the sport, but like, you know, kids that are 20, 30 years old, they're not like aware of the stuff that happened in the 90s because they were either a little kid or not even born. So they don't even look into that. And yeah, but the Notre Dame thing, I just feel like at this point they need to get into a conference like full time.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just needs to happen.
Well, they're burning a lot of bridges. So
I know, and it seems like they're burning the bridge completely with the ACC. So I don't know what will happen there, but they need to do something because the fact that they're not playing a conference championship game, which is another data point to get you into the playoff, is kind of undermining a lot of what they're doing. So I think if they were smart, they would get into, you know, the Big Ten. I mean, honestly, I know it's weird. They probably should just join the SEC. You know, that like I know they like for whatever reason the Big Ten seems kind of you know, over bloated at this point. Seems like there's too many teams, but like the SEC is only at 16. So like I'm sure they would want to take on Notre Dame. It would kind of mess up scheduling whatnot. Maybe if they took another team, but I don't know. Just for Notre Dame's sake, they need to get into a conference because they need that extra game of a conference championship game to boost their resume. And right now, their resume looks really kind of sad because, you know, with the ACC teams that they were playing this year, you know, the best team that they played was Pitt, and Pitt looked like garbage against ECU the other day. And so, like, I don't know. Let's move on. Let's talk about the games coming up on Wednesday and Thursday, New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. The first game we have is Miami and Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl on Wednesday night, New Year's Eve night. You know, I'm going to give you the leeway here on all these, Ian. I want to hear your thoughts first, and then I'll jump into mine. So give me your thoughts on this game.
So the much publicized, you know, rematch, because this is the first bowl game they played since the controversial national championship in 2002 and the Fiesta Bowl, where it was the, you know, pass interference call, and then Ohio State won in overtime. But with this game, Ohio State comes in as heavy favorites. Their only loss coming from Indiana. But there is a point that a lot of people are making is that Ohio State, realistically looking at their schedule, has played three legitimately good teams, like solid teams. And even some I'm going to put very loosely because I would put Texas, solid team. They beat A&M. They still also lost to a bad Florida team. And then, you know, they played Michigan, who, before everything exploded at that, in Ann Arbor, still a tough win. And then obviously the loss to Indiana, but they were in that Indiana game in the Big Ten championship the whole time. That game could have easily flipped the other way. We still need to see Ohio State just really, like, this is their chance to really prove it. Kind of like last year. Last year, though, they had their backs against the wall. Ryan Day had his back against the wall. I firmly believe it's no secret that if they didn't go at least to the national championship, he is not coaching in Columbus right now. But now they need to go out and say, look, we are still 1 and 2, 1A and 1B in college football right now. They need to have the defense to, you know, shut out this Miami offense, which A&M did very well on. They have a very good playbook on, you know, stopping Miami. It's all about making sure, because Miami's going to wear you down. That's how they beat A&M. Guys like Tony just, you know, on the outside bubble screens and then running the ball down your throat in the fourth quarter. Ohio State needs to find a way to bridge those gaps and make sure they are not in those fourth quarter situations, getting Miami 6 yards a clip pretty much. For Ohio State offensively, obviously the defense for Miami is going to be their strongest suit. So now you have to find a way to spread them out. Bo Jackson is a horse at running back, and you have, you know, the best wide receiving room in the country right now.
BoJack Horseman?
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that. Good point. Happy accident. Ohio State has the best wide receiver room in the country too, and Julian Sayin is as accurate as they come. So getting through that secondary, which Marcel Reed, definitely struggled with. Here's the difference, though. Marcel Reed could run. So Miami's strategy has to be we've got to collapse the pocket. We have to maybe have our corners blitz on the edge, because that is something Indiana did. The D-line shifts are going to be very important for how Ohio State's offensive line adjusts, because they're going to try to overload on one side and have Sayin force a bad pass, because that's the thing. I think that's going to be the key. If Sayin is in the pocket and comfortable, Ohio State's not going to have a problem. But it's easier said than done with this Miami defense. I feel like, though, even with the coverage, you will find it. Sayin is accurate enough where he's maybe thrown 2 bad passes, and in credit, they were the first quarter against Michigan and the first quarter in the Big Ten championship. But you don't really see him force it. There was only those 2 passes. He didn't force it after that, both the Michigan and the Ohio State game. So even with coverage, I feel like he'll either throw it away, maybe run for a few yards, or find, Tate or Smith to, get some yardage there. So it's going to be very important for Miami to get some pressure on Sayin to make sure he's feeling uncomfortable, because then you can force some bad passes when he's not going through his progression. Miami offensively, Ohio State just as good defensively too. That's the thing, is you got to try to keep this game close. Wear them down, get into the fourth quarter like you did with A&M in a lot of these games, and try to run it out. You can try to rely on Carson Beck, but with that secondary and linebacking core of Ohio State, you're entering very dangerous territory. I think the smart thing to do would be maybe some more play-action rollout passes, maybe favor one side to Beck, his throwing side, swing passes, out routes, something like that. Do not force – if you're going to have a home run play, make sure it's on a play action. Make sure there's a better chance for Beck, and that, nobody on the secondary is going to be able to snatch it out of the air. I feel like in this game, I think if Ohio State's defense, like I said, can get pressure on Sayin, they can keep this game close. But Ohio State, again, there's been a lot of talk about them haven't really truly proven themselves this season, because, they played Texas week 1, pretty much layups for the rest of the way until the Michigan game, won that one in Ann Arbor. Then they lost the Big Ten championship only by 3 points. So now this is another prove it. And if they win this one, I mean, all the momentum for them to, into the next round. Like I said, if Miami keeps it close, they have a better shot. But I think Ohio State can out-talent right now Miami. And I'm going to take the Buckeyes winning this one. I think they pull away late. And I'm going to go with like let's do like a 31-20 win for Ohio State.
Yeah, I did like a real deep dive on these games. Like I really I did either the condensed game or the actual snap for snap of most of these games. And I watched, from Friday to yesterday, and I was watching a ton of these specific games through all these teams. I rewatched the Ohio State Michigan game, and I rewatched the Ohio State Indiana game. I did not rewatch the Miami Texas A&M game. I felt like that game was not a real good precursor to what is going to happen in this game. I did rewatch the Notre Dame Miami game, which I felt like that was the best example of what Miami went up against as far as playoff caliber team, because even though Notre Dame didn't get in, they were right there on the edge. And I think the A&M game was a little bit of fool's gold, just because it's one, Beck didn't throw the ball a ton, and I think that might have been the offensive game plan. I think they wanted to limit how much exposure he had in that game, so that he could limit mistakes, which, going into this game is going to be huge, because if they're forced to throw the ball a ton, then, Beck, I don't expect him to have a clean game. I don't expect it to be 0 interceptions next to his name. I expect 1 or 2 at least. Like you said with Sand is very accurate, and he's had like very little interceptions just the first quarter of both the Michigan and the Indiana game. So I don't expect him to get rattled too much. But I was looking at it. Indiana did get 5 sacks in that Big Ten championship game, and I feel like Miami's defensive line is better than Indiana's, at least talent-wise. Because, God, I always forget his name. Number 3 for Miami, Nestamore. Yeah. So him and Bain, are just two freaks of nature, and they just eat tackles alive. And so I feel like they're going to be in the backfield a little bit. It will be huge for Bojack Horseman. He needs to have a good game. And he had a decent game against Indiana. He had 83 yards. But I think the thing that stands out the most for Miami and the game plan of what happened in that A&M game was Malachi Toney was double teamed almost the entire time. So A&M was basically eliminating him from the game, which outside of that punt return and that touchdown on that jet sweep that he had, that was about it. He didn't really do much at all the rest of the game. And so really the focus that Miami was having and what they had great success was running the ball with Fletcher. And if you saw in the Indiana game, Black and Hemby are very similar backs to Fletcher, very similar size kind of games. So I expect Fletcher to have a good game. And that'll be crucial for Miami, because if he doesn't have a good game and Ohio State's able to stop that running attack, then it's going to be a long day for Miami. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Fletcher's going to do well, and that's going to set up, like you said, possibly play action stuff for Beck. And if they're able to do that, I think they're able to stay in the game just enough. With all these games, I think the hardest one to decipher is the Texas Tech and Oregon game, and the least hardest to decipher is the Georgia Ole Miss game. So this one and the Alabama Indiana game are kind of in between that. And I feel like Miami is good enough to win this game, but I just like Ohio State's talent more. I feel like Jeremiah Smith, the wide receivers, Julian Sand, I feel like will eventually be a better quarterback and will be an NFL quarterback. And I don't think Carson Beck is as good as he is. And I think that's the difference in the game is, Ohio State's going to be able to pass the ball just enough and make some plays. I feel like Sand is also a little more elusive than Beck. And so Beck's a little bit of a sitting target back there. So Ohio State's going to tee off on him. And even though Miami's going to get some pressure on Sand, I feel like Sand is going to be able to get away enough times on rollouts, play actions, whatever, to be able to make some plays. And, the tight ends as well for Ohio State have made some plays. The one was Claire, and I can't remember the other guy's name. I was watching in those games. And so expect that to be part of their package as well. Some of the tight end play, which, the two of them are decent tight ends. Miami's tight end play, it's been okay. They definitely go to them in their red zone offense for sure, that I've noticed. I think, I don't think you can do a game plan like Texas A&M. I think it's too hard. I don't think they're going to do it where they're going to, double up on Toney. I don't know. Maybe it is the right one. Because it did kind of work. I don't think Texas A&M was expecting Mark Fletcher to have as big of a game as he did. Because of that, it really kind of changed how things went. I think if they were able to get the stops in the run game, that game would have went a lot different. But Fletcher was, 10-yard clip. He had the one run at the end of the game where it was like a 50-yard run to pretty much give them the win. So I don't know. I think Ohio State's going to win. I'm just going to say probably like a 28 to like 17 game. And you said 30. What did you say?
I said 31-20.
Yeah, it's something about that. It might be like a 10 to 11 point difference, and maybe and I'm thinking like it's at the end of the game, and maybe Ohio State scores late to go up 2 scores and put to ice the game. Let's move on to the next game. This is actually this is the most difficult game to figure out because Texas Tech and Oregon are two well coached, two talented teams. I think Texas Tech has the best defense in the rest of the playoff and probably even the entire country in general. Oregon, as far as offense, has so many weapons. There's like 3 or 4 backs that they have. They have like 5 or 6 wide receivers. It's crazy. But again, I want to hear your thoughts first, and then I'll give my thoughts.
So, yeah, this game, agreed. It's very, very tricky to decide this one because both of these teams are very, dynamic. Texas Tech has been one of the most and definitely the best team out of the Big 12, and I have been saying it all year, and I'll stand by it. They have the best defense in the country, and it will just come out, punch you in the mouth, and they can score off their defense, and they can get in good field position on the offense. Now they face this huge test in this, very dynamic Oregon offense. Guys like Dante Moore and the athleticism they have. With this game, it's going to be very interesting with how both offenses do because Oregon's defense is no slouch either. They're number 7 in the country, in the entire country, and I think they're 6th against the pass. The run game is 22nd, which is still really good, but that could be a crease that Texas Tech can exploit, having a running back like Dickey to maybe soften it up, maybe 4 or 5 yards a clip, and then have Morton either roll out and, hit some passes. In this game, the thing that's kind of tipping the scale for me is because you got to look at how the seasons have gone. Oregon's one loss is to Indiana, who is the best team in the country without a doubt. And Texas Tech's, one loss is to Arizona State, which, not a bad team, but definitely not in the same level. But I think the difference of those is that Oregon has been playing with fire all season. They had the 18-16 win against it was Iowa. They had an 18-16 win against Iowa. They, not so comfortably beat Wisconsin. The Washington game was close. I'll give that one a pass because it's a rivalry game. But other than the Arizona State game, Texas Tech has been on a war path. It's just any team that they've faced, they just completely dismantle and destroy, led by their defense. And it really, for me, the deciding factor in this one is what Oregon offense are we going to get? Are we going to get the one that can put up 60 points and score every drive? Or are we going to get the one that gets stuck in the mud? Now that you're playing a really good defense again, that's the thing that I've noticed is when they play good defenses, Indiana, an Iowa, I'll even say when they played Penn State still had a really good defense at the time.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be the deciding factor, and that was kind of what tipped it for me. I like Texas Tech's defense in this one, creating enough problems for Oregon. And I feel like if they win the field position battle, Texas Tech can just play their game. Oregon's got to find a way to, not fall into the trap that the Red Raiders have, especially on defense, but it's easier said than done because they have some of the best linebackers and the best defense of the country. Dante Moore is going to need to get more mobile, maybe some more swing passes, more toss plays to the running backs. But I like the Red Raiders winning this one in the Orange Bowl. I'm going to go with let's do a 27-21 win for Texas Tech.
Yeah, with this Texas Tech, the thing that I noticed, it just seems like the O-line might be an issue, might be like their weak link as far as their entire team because everything else is pretty top tier. Like the receivers are great. I love Dickey and Williams. I think they're probably the best combination of backs in the country left. Um, but with the O line, it seems like they can get pressure on Morton a little bit. And if Oregon's able to do that with 4 linemen, it could be a long day for Morton. But again, Texas Tech is able to make a lot of explosive plays. In that Utah game, Dickey ran a short or a shallow in crosser, and he dips underneath the line of scrimmage to make it a throw behind the line of scrimmage. And so they were able to get that block, and then it was like a 70-yard play. And so, like, that's stuff that they can do to alleviate some of that pressure. I like the receivers a ton. Virgil, Eakin, Douglas, they all do phenomenally well. They all have really good hands. Even their tight end, I can't remember his name. I think it's number 7. The tight end is really solid, makes a good amount of plays. As far as Oregon, ton of wide receivers like we talked about. I think the thing that came about in the James Madison game was Malik Benson having a huge game, which I think that might be the case here. He's so fast, and there's so many of these receivers that you lose track of him. And it seems to happen almost once a game. It happened in the Indiana game, happened in the James Madison game. It just happens, and I think it happened in the USC game. He just gets loose for like a 40-yard touchdown, 40, 50-yard touchdown, seemingly all the time. And he's wide open when he gets them too. Yeah. It's not even close. Like there's like no one around him because he's just that fast. And the play calling is pretty top tier. I like Will Stein a lot, and I think he'll do well at Kentucky. But running back wise, Davison, some of the other guys, it's a huge smattering of guys in that running back room, and they all can carry the ball very well. I think Davidson's more of the big back. So you'll see him as a battering ram. But as far as Oregon's defense, I felt like they were going to give up explosive plays to James Madison because I knew James Madison's offense was good. And I feel like that's going to be the case here. Like, Texas Tech puts up really big numbers as far as yardage and explosive plays. So I expect at least like 4 or 5 of those if it's in the run game or if it's long passing plays with Morton. I will say when you were mentioning the Arizona State loss, they didn't have Morton in that game.
Yeah,
it was Hammond that played. So it's kind of hard to judge that game because it's like that's not their whole team because Morton didn't play. So we've got Morton in this game, and that's why I looked at the BYU game, the first game, because in the Big 12 championship game, Bear Bachmeier was hurt, so that wasn't didn't see the full effect of BYU, and I felt like you saw BYU as full strength, and Texas Tech just looked so much better, even when Bear Bachmeier was at full strength. So I watched that game, and then I watched the Utah game, which, credit to Utah because Utah had a really great year outside of losing to BYU and Texas Tech. So, and Texas Tech in that game, Hammond was in half of it. So, again, it's kind of hard to judge. Morton played well enough, but then Hammond really took off in that game. So I guess you could be a little bit of both as far as that Arizona State loss. But I like Texas Tech. We've talked about them all year. It's been from the jump, literally that Utah game, which was like the 3rd or 4th game of the year. We knew Texas Tech was going to be a good team. Rodriguez is a stud linebacker. The other guy, I can't even remember his name, number 13 for the linebacker for Texas Tech. He's a stud. They force mistakes. They create a ton of turnovers. And, Dante had 2 interceptions last week against James Madison. So that may come to bite them in the butt this week. So if Texas Tech is able to create some turnovers, which I think they will, Morton, has got to eliminate them. I think he still can, create some turnovers himself. So they got to be careful there. They got to be safe with the ball. I think it's going to be a really close game. I think it's going to be, the one thing with Texas Tech seems like their field goal kicker makes a lot of field goals.
Yeah, that's true.
They're not worried there. They're if it comes down to a field goal game, I think they'll be fine. It's in a dome, so it doesn't matter. Or no, it's in the Orange Bowl. So we'll kind of dome. Everything's covered now. So, but no, I feel like Texas Tech should win this game, and it's going to be close. I'm going to say Texas Tech scores a field goal late to go up by a point or two, and makes a stop on defense, and that's it. So I'm going to say a 28-27 game. All right, let's move on to the last two. We got Indiana, Alabama. I want to hear your thoughts. Again, I want to hear your thoughts first because I just want to hear what you're thinking on this.
So obviously Bama, if they are smart, and they should be, cannot fall into the trap that they did against Oklahoma. If they have that first quarter, because Indiana is not going to give you a chance to get back in the game. They're too good and too well coached for that to happen. For Indiana, obviously, once again, another biggest game in program history, especially since this millennium, playing in the Rose Bowl, representing the Big Ten in the Rose Bowl, and playing against Bama. Indiana needs to really just play their game. And Alabama, especially offensively until that second half, has really struggled. The one thing, though, is that we knew how good Oklahoma's defense was, and Alabama adjusted very well. So it's going to come down to guys like, I feel like if Jam Miller can, we've really been waiting to see him turn it on. If he can have a good rushing attack, and if the wide receivers, if Ryan Williams can, kind of come out of his shell, because we know Ty Simpson is athletic, is a very good quarterback, but with guys like Fernando Mendoza, with how balanced that offensive attack is, that's why Indiana has been so good on offense, is that of how balanced it is. You got guys like Hemby, the running back, and then Cooper to catch for Mendoza, and obviously Mendoza winning the Heisman Trophy, one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I think defensively, though, that's been the issue. Indiana has been fantastic on defense, bar none. For Bama, it's been kind of rivers and valleys between games, because you had, they got really smacked around defensively against Georgia, and then they lose the first matchup against Oklahoma. They've had to really get bailed out sometimes, and I'm not going to let go of that Florida State loss. I'm sorry. They did that, they did get, pretty much humiliated defensively against Florida State, and that is not a good team. In this game, like I said, if Indiana just plays their game, they've got Bama where they want them. And Bama's going to have to find a way. I think they might need to kind of pull a trick out of the Nick Saban playbook. They know Indiana, and this is something Ohio State was trying to do in the Big Ten Championship. They know Indiana's best strength is the offense. So keep that ball as long as possible. Do not give Mendoza any chance to hit big plays. Do not give Hemby any chance to make big runs. Keep the ball as long as possible. Make long, sustained drives, even if it results in field goals. Get points on the boards, ideally touchdowns. But, 8, 9 play drives that take up 5, 6, 7 minutes of the game, where Indiana doesn't have the ball as long, that might be Bama's best shot. For me, though, it's easier said than done. And even if that does happen, Indiana's offense, we know how quick they can score. Alabama's defense needs to bring their lunch pails and, be ready to play, because Indiana's going to give everything they got. And I think in that one, I think this game is going to be closer than some may realize, but I like the Hoosiers in this one. I think it might be tied, or maybe Bama might have the lead, or one team only leading by a field goal into half. But going into the end of the game, that's the thing. Indiana has been in these situations, Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State. They've been in a lot of close games with a lot of teams. Yeah. and they've won out. Bama, on the other hand, minus the Georgia game, and yeah, South Carolina, Auburn, the teams they won kind of close by weren't as impressive as Indiana's. So I'm with that. I'm going to take Indiana winning this one. Like I said, I think it'll be close, but I'm going to take the Hoosiers winning in the end. I'm going to go with let's do a 34-29 win. Kind of a weird score.
I just wanted to caveat. I didn't add in my breakdown of the Texas Tech Oregon game. Surratt had a great game against Oregon, and I feel like the wide receivers for Texas Tech will as well. And then the other thing I wanted to add was BYU was forced into a lot of checkdowns in that game because the coverage for Texas Tech was phenomenal. So
yeah,
you might see Oregon struggle in that game because of that. But I like Dante Moore a ton better than Bear Bachmeier, so maybe he's able to find his way out through that. But on to this game. So, yeah, I love Indiana a ton. I love Cignetti. I think he is by far the best coach in college football right now. I don't think there's anyone better. I think Kirby Smart gets the nod just because of his 2 championships, but Cignetti is basically, the Gator Nation football podcast guys like to call him. He's a Death Star. He really is a Death Star. He's determined to win. He only has 2 losses at Indiana, and at this point, I don't know if they're going to get a loss. I feel like they should beat this Alabama team. I like the Alabama team a ton. I like Ty Simpson. I like the weapons he has. I like Cuevas, the tight end. I like Jeremy Bernard a ton. I think the guy's super talented. Jam Miller's healthy. And that's the key here is they're getting health back for Alabama, which should go a long way for their offensive improving. I think in that first little bit against Oklahoma, it was a struggle. But once they got cooking, Brooks, the young freshman, number 17 for Alabama, that guy had a heck of a game against Oklahoma. 2 touchdowns, huge conversions, just phenomenal game for him. I think Jam Miller will be hugely important in this game. I think they need to run the ball a ton to stay out of 3rd and longs, which Indiana will feast on, which they did a good job against Ohio State in that Big Ten championship game. Love Surratt for Indiana. I think Surratt is, he's not my wide receiver 1. You know who that is. You know, Ja'Kai Lemon. Ja'Kai Lemon's my wide receiver 1, but Surratt is right there. He is the guy. He's just sure-handed and he makes plays. I mean, he made plays in the Oregon game. He made plays in the Big Ten championship game. The guy is a stud, and I expect him to have a good game. And then you have Becker and Cooper for Indiana as well. Becker, huge plays in that game, especially that 3rd down to eat up the clock and basically give Ohio State no time to get down the field. Cooper was hurt in the first quarter of that Ohio State game, so expect him back. He should be healthy in this game. A lot of explosives for Indiana. They're just a very well-coached team that does the small details right. I love that tight end H-back they have, number 37, Nowakowski. The kid just, man, he makes plays, and he's like great blocker, just a phenomenal player there for them. Their defense is very stout. They get pressure with only 4 linemen most of the time. They mix and match with their linebackers who they're rushing with, so they'll come off one side, whatever, and it makes the pressure where it's come from. It's hard for the offensive line to really decipher where it's coming from, so they struggle with picking up those certain points of pressure, and so that's how they're able to get the sacks. They had 5 sacks against Ohio State, who's a really good offensive line. Bama, I think their defense is underwhelming, and I think that's going to be the problem here. They're able to create turnovers, which they did against Oklahoma. They got that huge pick 6. Indiana doesn't do a ton of that. They did have the pick early from Mendoza, but they limit those mistakes for the most part. I like Indiana in this game. This is a relatively easy game to pick for me. I feel like Indiana is the better team. I feel like they're on a mission. Like even Signetti said, a year too late, he felt like they were good enough last year to do this stuff. And like, they're even better this year. And I feel like it's going to be like probably like a 30 to like 17 game. Okay, last game. This is the easiest game to pick. I'm sorry, Ole Miss, but I feel like this is the easiest game out of the 4 to pick. Ian, your thoughts, and then I'll get into mine.
Yeah, and it really comes out because it's interesting with Georgia offensively in the country. They have ranked kind of in like the 30-40 range, not like kind of middle of the pack in the SEC as well. But defensively, I mean, it's Georgia. It's Kirby Smart. It's his brainchild. They're the suffocating defense. Even passing wise, though, there has been a struggle, and I'll get to that as Ole Miss's hope. But we know how good they are defensively and offensively. Still, Georgia, if they need to like win in a shootout, we've seen them do that before. For Ole Miss on the other side, obviously elite offense. Chambliss has had a fantastic season, especially if Lacey has a great game as well. It's a really deadly 1-2 punch. But defensively, there's definitely been some, question marks there. The hope, like I said, I don't think this one is as difficult, but for Ole Miss, I'll extend an olive branch. The chance is if Lacey can just get 150, 200-yard games, just go absolutely off. Now, that's asking a lot.
Yeah.
This Georgia defense, a lot. Yeah. But if he has a good running game, then that makes it easier for Chambliss in the passing game, especially with how mobile Chambliss can be in the passing game. That is the one caveat, is that Georgia's defensive against the pass, I think, is actually like 47th total. But again, I mean, still, they're like top 10, defense in the country. And especially now defensively for Ole Miss, they have got to get the stops. The best chance for Ole Miss is to make this game a shootout. But even then, like we saw Georgia do this year, they can win shootouts too. But that would be my hope for Ole Miss fans of how they would win that game, is have Lacey have a really good run game and make it easier for Chambliss in the passing game. That way you're just running up and down the field. But again, very tough against Georgia. I don't think that's going to happen. And even if it does, Georgia is prepared for that. They have been in these situations all season. They have found ways to win. They are, literally, because I hate cockroaches and I hate Georgia, so it makes sense that neither of them will die. So I got the Bulldogs winning this one. Regardless, I think they'll win out. I'm going to go Bulldogs winning I don't know. Let's do like let's do like 28-20, something like that. I don't think the defense is going to be able to give up that many points.
I mean, it pains me to say it, but this Georgia team, just rewatching the Georgia Ole Miss game from earlier this year, it's just, there's no way Ole Miss, like, the only way they're going to win this game is if they play perfect on offense. And to tell one side of the ball, you have to play perfect, it is kind of an impossible task, considering that Georgia is still a good enough defense, one of the better in the country. And Ole Miss's defense, though, the problem is they're just not good enough. They could not stop Georgia. The tight ends, Lawson Lucky and Delp. Lucky had 3 touchdowns. Delp was making a ton of plays. I mean, between them, I think they had like over 100 yards of receiving. Frazier had a good game. Bowman had a good game. Stockton, again, elusive on those breakdowns, on those third downs, and, them needing a first down to convert and keep the chains moving. He was making plays with his legs more so than with his arm. He still made plenty of plays with his arm, but it was a ton of first downs because of his legs. And, I expect the same here. I don't think Ole Miss's defense is good enough. Like, that's why I didn't really love them picking Golding as the head coach. Is what it is. That's their decision. Golding's been there a little bit, so they kind of like the familiarity. But I've never been a fan of Golding. I didn't think he was that great with Alabama. He goes to Ole Miss. I don't think he's doing that great. I think, their offense is phenomenal. Chambliss, Lacey, Wright, Alexander, what's the other guy's name? Can't think of the wide receivers, but they've got a slew of wide receivers that just make a ton of plays, and the offense is going to score. I have no doubt in my mind in this game that Ole Miss is going to score points. The problem is they will not be able to stop Georgia, and that just is there's nothing they can do. They don't have the talent on that side of the ball that they do commiserate to the offense. So Georgia's going to be able to score points. I'm thinking Georgia scores at least 35. And I'm thinking that Ole Miss may score at most is like 28, 31 points. And so I'm going to go with 35-31 Georgia. And it pains me to say that because you know how much I dislike Georgia. Yep. And we both dislike Georgia, but it's the reality. We're just looking at this as objective analysts of this sport. And it's just like Georgia has the better team between the two, definitely the better defense, and they're not better offense, but because of the matchup between the two teams, Ole Miss's defense is just not good enough. And and it stinks because I wish Ole Miss probably was playing any other team and they probably would match up better with them, but they're going up against a team that they've already lost to, and I feel like Georgia's got their number. And they're going to make the plays to win. So that's it. Do you have any other thoughts before we go?
Pop-Tart Bowl should be a playoff game.
Maybe in the future if we get to the 2014 playoff.
Yeah.
That is the show, y'all. Reach us at haterradio.com. Also for socials, type in Hater Radio, comes right up. Ian, what is your handle again?
At Twitter, it's at G5Gibson, and at YouTube and Instagram, it's at G_Gator_G.
Okay, that is the show. Enjoy the New Year's festivities. Be safe. If you're going to drink, Uber home, wherever you go. Enjoy these games. We'll talk to you on Friday, January 2nd for the show. I know it's a little off kilter, but these playoff games kind of throw everything around. So we'll do a Friday show recap and then a Sunday preview of the games the following week. So catch us again, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific this Friday. No show on Wednesday because of the games. And then we'll talk to you then. All right. Take care, y'all.